The events of May the 26th, 1989 at Anfield are etched into football's collective memory as one of those rare, genuinely cinematic moments where sport transcends its own boundaries. This wasn't just a football match, it was a drama of Shakespearean proportions, complete with heroes, villains, unbearable tension.
It's 100 years since English football produced an occasion such as this, the teams occupying first and second place in the championship, head to head, the last match of the season.
And an ending so outrageous that if it were pitched to a film studio, it would have been laughed out of the room for being a bit much.
For so long it seemed in command. Set the final whistle! Arsenal, the champions!
Arsenal, with their backs firmly pressed against the wall, strode into Liverpool's fortress needing to win by 2 clear goals to snatch the league title from the reigning champions. The odds were slim. The atmosphere was hostile.
I suppose if you believe in happy endings, then the script has already been written and the championship trophy will stay here at Anfield for another year. Well, that's the obvious conclusion, that Liverpool will win the double, just as everyone said they would 12 months ago.
But by the time Michael Thomas's boot made contact with the ball in the dying moments, a miracle had unfolded. Let's rewind to the start of that season though, because you don't get to Anfield 1989 without understanding the chaos, setbacks, and occasional brilliance that brought Arsenal to that fateful night.
This was a unique moment in sport where the top 2 teams were going head to head, last game of the season.
The fact that it was a standalone game, everybody else had finished, the eyes of the country were watching.
If you wrote that in a book, people wouldn't believe it. It's crazy that it turned out that way and to be won that way.
Liverpool knew that we had to beat them 2-0. Teams don't go up to Liverpool and Anfield and beat them like that.
The 1988-89 campaign began with a sense of cautious optimism at Highbury. George Graham's Arsenal weren't flashy, but they were effective, a side that embodied discipline, organisation, and an unshakable work ethic. Everyone knew their job, Alan Smith, Arsenal's reliable striker, would later recall. George drilled us relentlessly. It wasn't always fun, but it worked. The opening match against Wimbledon was the perfect start, a 5-1 demolition that saw Smith bag a hat-trick, while Paul Merson and Brian Marwood joined in the fun. It was a statement win, but September brought Arsenal crashing back down to reality. A tight 3-2 victory over Tottenham in the North London derby provided some relief, but defeats to Aston Villa and Sheffield Wednesday, coupled with a draw against Southampton, hinted at the fragility beneath the surface. Arsenal were hardly a team cruising towards glory. As the leaves turned in October, Arsenal embarked on a 7-game unbeaten run that suggested they were finding their rhythm. This included emphatic 4-1 wins over Nottingham Forest and West Ham, where Smith, Marwood and the young Michael Thomas all got on the scoresheet. By November, they looked like genuine contenders, but their momentum took a hit with a narrow 2-1 defeat at Derby County. It was the kind of slip-up that made observers wonder if Arsenal had the steel to go all the way.
He beat them twice in their championship year. Ted McMinn bamboozling Lee Dixon. He had a bit of luck on his side as well, didn't he? He also had Paul Goddard's 6th goal of the season.
December was a month of frustrating draws, including a cagey 1-1 stalemate against title rivals Liverpool at Highbury. Arsenal were holding their own, but not pulling away, and the festive season brought further headaches.
Aldridge is there with a header! Oh, he'll be furious with himself for that. Look, that picture tells it all. He knows that was a bad miss indeed, and the match could have been grabbed at the very last. Good work again by Beardsley.
A Boxing Day trip to Charlton saw Arsenal scrape a 3-2 win, but this was hardly the form of champions.
Merson makes it 2-0. Coming up though, a tremendous last 15 minutes. Charlton.
The North London derby in January provided a much-needed boost with a 2-0 victory over Spurs at Highbury, a result that Graham's men celebrated with all the subtlety of a conga line.
Ball in. Merson.
then came February. February, the month where Arsenal's title charge seemed to wobble dangerously. A 0-0 draw with Queen's Park Rangers and a dismal 1-0 defeat at Coventry had fans biting their nails down to the quick.
Now Brian Kilcline's already had one saved by John Lukic, and here Coventry earn a second. Arsenal absolutely furious about it, and there's a booking for Winterburn. This time Brian Kilcline scores 1-0 to the Sky Blues. And next, the only bright spot in this poor run.
Liverpool, relentless as ever, began to close the gap. Arsenal finished the month with a 2-0 win over Luton, but the cracks were starting to show.
Luton's visit to Highbury. The change worked out well. Steve Bold's header grows twisting into a spectacular scoring shot. And Arsenal breaking through Luton's dogged resistance after 63 minutes.
March didn't exactly inspire confidence either. A shocking 3-1 home defeat to Nottingham Forest
must be the offside trap. Nigel Clubb must be. Nottingham Forest take the lead.
Was followed by a nervy 2-2 draw with Charlton.
Encouraging enough. Alan Smith earning a free kick. It was taken quickly by Brian Marwood and tempted goalkeeper Bob Boulder to come off his line, only for David Rocastle to nip in for the equaliser.
By the time Arsenal managed a 3-1 win over Southampton at the end of the month, it felt less like a triumphant return to form and more like a desperate attempt to keep their title hopes alive. Even April, despite a string of wins, couldn't entirely dispel the nerves. Victories over Everton, Newcastle, Norwich and Middlesbrough were overshadowed by a 2-1 loss to Derby County and a 2-2 draw with Wimbledon. The finishing line was in sight, but Arsenal were limping rather than sprinting towards it. And so, it all came down to one match. Liverpool, reigning champions, were unbeaten at Anfield in the league all season.
They were just rattling off game after game, win after win after win, and it wasn't like a 1-0 win. They were winning convincingly, 3-4s, and they had the whole nation behind them, which is rightly so. And it was just like, pressure's on us.
Arsenal, who hadn't lifted the title since 1971, needed to win by 2 clear goals to take the crown on goals scored. People wrote us off before we'd even got on the coach, Smith admitted. I don't blame them. The odds were stacked against us. Anfield that night was a cauldron of noise, tension and raw emotion. Liverpool fans, brimming with confidence, treated the match like a coronation. Arsenal fans, outnumbered but defiant, clung to the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, something extraordinary could happen. The atmosphere was electric. Michael Thomas would later recall, "You could feel it in your chest, that kind of buzz you don't forget." The first half was an exercise in frustration for Arsenal. Liverpool, as expected, were disciplined and resolute, and Arsenal struggled to find a way through.
And another free kick. Again apparently given against Bold for Liverpool, no matter than 7 or 8 yards outside the Arsenal penalty area, fairly central, and one would imagine the sort of situation...
As the whistle blew for half-time, it was hard to escape the feeling that Liverpool was simply too strong, too experienced, Liverpool to let this slip away. But then came the second half, and with it, a flicker of hope. In the 52nd minute, Alan Smith rose to meet a free kick, glancing a header into the net. Anfield fell silent, save for the pocket of Arsenal fans who erupted in disbelief.
And Smith! And Arsenal have scored! The Liverpool players are surrounding the referee, asking him to speak to a linesman.
The linesman never hesitated at all, Brian. I looked immediately towards the linesman.
Well, let's see here. Winterburn's kick, and glanced in by Smith.
Liverpool players immediately surrounded the referee, claiming the ball hadn't touched Smith, but the goal stood.
Well, Liverpool were claiming that Smith handled the ball. On the word of the linesman, so much will now depend. Ronnie Whelan looking on there, the goal's been given. And what a game we have now. The breakthrough by Arsenal, their fans are delighted. The Arsenal bench wonder what happens now. Flicked across there on the far side. It was touched in by Smith.
I didn't even celebrate straight away. Smith admitted, I wasn't sure if it was going to be disallowed. When I realised it had been given, it was just pure relief.
We practiced it so much in training, used it so many times in matches, never came off. So we thought, oh no, we're not going to try this one again.
Adams has made a darting little run in there, and Smith!
We don't think Allen got a touch on it. We thought that when the ball was played in from the free kick that it had just gone straight into the goal.
We were all convinced the ref was going to disallow it, having spoken to the linesman, but you know, when he's pointed to the centre circle, you're thinking, wow, you know, we've got the first goal here.
It was a game-changing moment, there's no doubt about it, because all of a sudden you could sense that Arsenal were thinking, we only need one more.
1-0. Arsenal were halfway there, but the minutes ticked by with agonising slowness. Liverpool, rattled but not broken, dug in. Arsenal pushed forward, knowing a single mistake could cost them everything. The tension was unbearable. It was one of those games where every pass felt like it had the weight of the world on it, George Graham would later say. And then came the 91st minute. Arsenal, throwing everything forward, saw the ball break to Michael Thomas in midfield. For a split second, time seemed to freeze.
Adams is after his man, but Barnes will not be denied. Yes, he will, by Richardson, moment ago, down and injured.
Thomas surged forward, evading a desperate challenge from Steve Nicol.
Now, and surely what will be their last attack? A good ball by Dixon, finding Smith. For Thomas, charging through the midfield! Thomas!
Ahead of him stood Bruce Grobbelaar, Liverpool's eccentric but brilliant goalkeeper. All I could think was, don't mess it up, Thomas admitted. He didn't. With the calmness of a man playing in the park, Thomas lifted the ball over Grobbelaar and into the net.
When I've seen the play developing over on the right-hand side, I'm now running back to try and get in position.
Thomas charging through the midfield!
And then it's just like who's going to show the hand first, me or Bruce, you know? And I was waiting and waiting for Bruce to show his hand. And luckily he did. Otherwise, Ray Houghton would have tackled me.
That's my biggest regret on the pitch to this day. I think someone sent me a photograph with Michael going through and me on the floor, being very, very close to him. I should have brought him down, simple as that.
Thomas! It's up for grabs now! Thomas!
Where am I going? I didn't know how to handle it, actually. I really did.
2-0. Anfield was stunned into silence. Arsenal players collapsed in jubilation.
Right at the end! An unbelievable climax to the league season. Well into injury time, the Liverpool players are down, absolutely abject.
Liverpool, champions no more, looked shell-shocked. The final whistle blew moments later, confirming Arsenal as league champions. I've never felt anything like it, Thomas said. It was like an out-of-body experience.
As Liverpool now, for so long it seemed in command, set the final whistle. Arsenal, the champions!
What followed was a blur of celebrations, disbelief and sheer joy. Arsenal fans chanted long into the night, while Liverpool supporters, to their credit, stayed to applaud the new champions. For Arsenal, this wasn't just a title win, it was a moment of immortality. We'll never forget it, Graham said. None of us will.
I wasn't the type to run around all over the place, but the best moment probably of my career in football period.
In the years since, that night at Anfield has taken on an almost mythical quality.
I'm very proud that, about that moment and what I've achieved in the game. And I've achieved it with the players who I grew up with in the Arsenal youth team, and then obviously the other players.
It wasn't just a football match, it was a reminder of why we love this ridiculous, infuriating, wonderful game. Arsenal weren't supposed to win. They weren't supposed to march into Anfield and take the title from Liverpool. But they did, and in doing so, they gave us a story that will be told and retold as long as football is played.